This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSPORT Fan Network. TalkSPORT. Powered by fans.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Red Side of Trent, here to preview the Newcastle United game as Forest head up to St James's Park at the weekend on Sunday. Welcoming back Mason Coy to preview it from a Forest point of view. Mason, how are you first of all?
Yeah, good mate, thank you. Very good.
Good. I know the result of the weekend was a little bit disappointing, but still third in the league. What did you make of the Fulham game? I don't think we really got near him, to be honest, in all honesty.
Yeah, it was a tough one, really. It was a tough one to watch. To be honest, I think as you'll know probably the best, my initial reaction was absolute head loss. But then probably about an hour after the game, I looked at the table and I was smiling again. So, but yeah, in terms of the actual match, I just think Marco Silva's just got Nuno's number, hasn't he, really? I think quite a few times now. I think we've only beat them once since we came up. Obviously, that was the home fixture where we were on fire. But yeah, I think Marco Silva just knows how to play against us. They always seem to have spare men in midfield. I don't know how, I don't know why. We looked a bit lethargic, to be honest. I don't want to say tired. I don't want to say tired. I think lethargic is probably the right word. I think we just seemed a bit meh. We weren't at it.
You made me laugh because obviously you reiterated to how you always feel in our WhatsApp group. So lots of people know that when you come on here, you're quite calm and collective and got a few nice thoughts and stuff. But in a WhatsApp group, when Forest are losing, you want to kill them all and sell the whole team half the time, which always brings a smile to my face. So I'm glad you've looked at the table and it's made you feel a little bit better. But yeah, I think you're right about Marco Silva. I think Fulham just find a way. They kind of turn into Real Madrid a little bit. Sanderberg turns into Yaya Toure against us every time. Nemesis list for sure. And yeah, I think it's kind of just a regroup kind of thing, at least with us playing Newcastle this week. And they're kind of feeling sorry for themselves as well. Because I thought they'd get a lot. I thought that result against Newcastle would be a lot, against Man City, should I say, would have been a lot closer.
Yeah, we're both wounded animals at the minute, aren't we? So it could be a bit of a dangerous game. But yeah, they're going for a rough patch, but we're not even going for a rough patch. I just think obviously since we've had that little break, we haven't got up and running again, so hopefully we can sort that out at Newcastle.
Do you think this is where our Achilles heel is, and because of where we've come from and then the recruitment we did in the summer? I know this has been a massive topic of debate across everywhere, probably social media, over podcasts as well, but because we've leaped above the mid-table positions that we wanted to be in, and then we've brought in players, not to disrespect Jota and Sosa and players like that, but now we're finding it hard for options off the bench to have impact in games where we think, well, we need to keep winning because we want to keep in these Champions League spots, which is obviously a pipe dream. So do you think this is where it's become, our expectations have now gone too high almost for the squad, if you will?
Yeah, I don't think our expectations are too high. I think we've just moved too quickly, and obviously no one expected to move this fast. So, like you touched on, like the Jotas and the Sosas, they're brilliant signings for where we were last year. Maybe even obviously a little bit further up the table. But for now, we're going up against teams who, look at City, for example. They spent how much in January? And that was just in January alone. Even Newcastle at the weekend, there's Joe Willock and people like that. You don't look at it, they're £30 million players. We're just competing way above our means, but it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. It shows you that Nuno's doing stuff right. But in terms of Achilles heel, I think that is one. And I think the other one is when we go behind in games. Obviously, I know we've got the stat, haven't we, where we've scored the most first goals or something ridiculous. We scored like 18 times first or something. But yeah, I think when we do go behind, obviously there's been Villa, where we've turned it round. But yeah, I think we do struggle for. It's not even a plan A or plan B. I think that's so harsh on Nuno. I think it's just having that firepower to bring on, or something to do something out of nothing. Like we've got obviously Gibbs White, who's like that. We've got Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, who are then players who can just do something literally out of nowhere. And you're like, wow, we just created a chance out of nothing. But off the bench, I think that's where we struggle a little bit. Yeah.
Do you think this is where next season Nuno has to then prove again that he's more of a capable manager, because he has to hopefully recruitment will come, and therefore he can then maybe change it up more so when he has to go after a game, because I think that's where we're all kind of trying to be nitpicky and maybe a bit too snobby, because we're like, we've got nothing to bring off the bench to chase a game because we only play one way, which is there's nothing wrong with that, because there's lots of teams that play with one way. But also it's naive because you can't win the same way every time. I think you've said it before when you've come on, like you can't. There's several ways to skin a cat and win a football match, which to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think to be fair, like everyone's still got to prove themselves, regardless of where we come or anything. Like if we end up not getting Europe, obviously that would feel like a massive failure to everyone. But even if we do, we've got to prove that we can go again and compete at the same level. So everyone's still got to prove themselves, yeah. But yeah, 100%, we need better depth. Like, don't get me wrong, our first 11, the quality we've got. Even Carragher keeps saying it now. He's done a massive U-turn, and he keeps saying, with the quality that Forest have got going forward, and we all know we've got the quality initially. It's what we can do to back it up or use someone to change a game. Well, I do feel sorry for them players in the same sense, because Sosa's come in. I like Sosa. Sosa's the one for me who I really think has got something. I don't know what it is. He's got that nasty South American in him as well. He's not come over. It's not as if he's come over and he's dead skinny and he's got nothing on him and he's struggling with the physicality of it, because he's got it. But I think he just needs a bit of time, and we're in a position really where we can't be drip feeding players in. Like we haven't got that luxury. If we imagine we'd start drip feeding players in and we drop out of Europe, and then it's on Nuno's head and everyone's saying he's a rubbish manager. So yeah, it's such a unique situation, to be fair. I don't think we've ever seen it before, obviously not at Forest, but with anyone else. It's quite bizarre.
I mean, Leicester must have had this conversation, because when they won the league, they were going from just escaping relegation to winning it. And you'd name their first 11, but I don't think you could name really any subs that come on and made like impacts. I think Leicester just got so lucky that Kante, Vardy, Mahrez didn't get injured. The back four were pretty much the same every week, and that's how it went, and just how it went for them that season. So I think we're kind of in similar situations in that sense. But this is a Premier League that is ridiculous, to be honest, quite frankly. But before we get into more in depth of Newcastle from our point of view, I do want to ask you about midfield, because as someone who played there as an academy player and everything else, which I think is pretty good to speak to you about, this whole debacle with bringing Danilo and Sangare back, and then Dominguez's potential little dig at not playing or whatever it was on Saturday. I feel sorry for Dominguez actually a little bit. And what are your thoughts on that whole situation?
How long we got? Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, I can see what Nuno's doing. He obviously rates Sangare and Danilo both highly, rightly so, in my opinion anyway. Obviously, there's another debate there with Sangare. But yeah, I feel sorry for Dominguez. I do, because he is partly one of the reasons why we are here, why we are in this position. I think he's been phenomenal this season, to be honest. I think he's massively... I think him and... Obviously, Nico Williams has been getting plaudits recently, but up until recently, them two are our most underrated and undervalued players, in my opinion. He does all the nasty stuff, but then he's still good on the ball as well. I do feel very, very sorry for him. In terms of starting games and stuff like that, I think we've got a good combination of midfielders that we can use in different games. Like, I think Nuno, for me, like I said earlier, I don't want to be harsh on him, because I don't want to be harsh on anyone. But I do think he got it wrong at the weekend in regards to the sub, bringing on Sangare. I think that was perfect for Dominguez to come on. But it's don't get me wrong, it's a great headache. It's a good headache to have. If you combined all of them together, you've got an absolute 100 out of 10 footballer. So they all bring different things. But for me, the mainstay at the minute is Anderson. And we have to quickly find the best partner for him, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, difficult situation. I'm quite glad I'm not in Nuno's shoes for this one. But I think Anderson gave him a conundrum from the get-go because obviously both of them got injured. He started playing centre midfield and was just brilliant. He's been brilliant pretty much most of the season. He's had like the odd game where he's been a bit poor. I thought he was poor Saturday personally, but I thought no one was good apart from that self. So, but we'll move on and look at Newcastle. We lost 4-0 at the weekend to City. Was you how surprised was you at that? Because I really was, especially with how City have been playing recently, and then obviously losing to Real Madrid in the first leg. We're recording this. I think the second leg is going to be tonight, I believe, if not tomorrow. I'm not sure now. Actually, I've not even looked. But yeah, how surprised was you, especially after that result in midweek?
Yeah, I was surprised. There was a bit of me that was surprised because I watched that game against Bournemouth, so I'm guessing they played like that. I haven't seen anything, but yeah, I was expecting more of a score draw or something along them lines, obviously, because City have had their trouble, haven't they, in defence and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Newcastle, in a bit like us, when they're off, they're off. Like as we proved this season, I think. Yeah, like I say, I watched the Bournemouth game, the Newcastle Bournemouth game. Obviously, Bournemouth did what they did to us, but Bournemouth absolutely tore them to shreds that day, and Newcastle were way, way off it. I'm hoping they play like that again on Sunday. Sorry. I'm hoping they play like that the weekend. But for me, I was very surprised that City managed to smash them like they did.
Do you think Newcastle suffer a little bit? I mean, I'm going to ask this to a Newcastle fan for the preview, but do you think Newcastle suffer in a sense like Forest do, where Eddie Howe's got this one way of playing and they don't really know how to adapt another way of playing because they're just so like, let's go for it every game. And once teams start picking holes in their system, they don't know how to revert back to being a bit more solid and being a bit more sturdy and maybe play on the counter attack because they've got the players to do that. Weirdly enough, they completely have, and I just find it a little bit strange that they can leak goals when you say when they're off.
Yeah, I think they've got quite a few similar players in terms of like looking to change a game. This is just from the outside looking in. I'm no Newcastle expert at all, but if you look at it and the midfielders, there's not necessarily one that's like a flair player or like a tricky one. They're all leggy ball players, aren't they? They're all very of a similar mold, and the wingers are pretty similar. Obviously, they've got the Swedish unit up front, but even they've got Osler who's come in now. He's been getting a few more minutes. He's of a similar ilk. He's tall, leggy, quick. He seems to be, not saying he's anything like Isak, he's not, but they don't seem to have any other different options. You know, like back in the day, it'd be like, oh, we're struggling to score with this small striker. Let's bring on this 6'5" unit and we'll boom it up to him. There's no one that's in Newcastle that's can really come on and change it in that sense, I don't think. So I think, but don't get me wrong, Eddie Howe's done a brilliant job as well. I'm a bit of a Newcastle lover from afar, to be honest. I love how they play, and I think they're the only team this season, obviously minus the obvious ones, who have absolutely ran us over. And that was the first game at the City ground where I was watching. I was thinking, we're getting bullied here. Like we are getting bullied, and I think that's why they beat us on the day, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Callum Wilson's been so injury prone in his new. There was a time when he was like keeping his sack out because he couldn't stop scoring, or he'd like come off the bench and score. And you thought, well, at least Newcastle from their point of view, be like, well, we've got at least another option to bring off the bench. You've got this box player that can score goals, but he just can't keep fit anymore. I mean, I wouldn't surprised if they got rid of him in the summer, to be honest. And there's a few others that are fringe players. Obviously, they got rid of Almiron. Jacob Murphy stepped up this season, and I thought Harvey Barnes might do a bit more, but he looks like he's not really making an impact at the moment there. I mean, I'll bring up their team from the weekend, which was this, because Sven Botman's been injured at the moment, so that's an interesting one, as is Joel Linton. So Newcastle's team at the weekend, just for the audio listeners, was Martin Dubravka in goal, Kieran Trippier, Sharp, Dan Burn, Lewis Hall across the back four, a flat three of Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Willock, with Jacob Murphy, Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon up top. with Joelinton and Botman missing Mason, I know we played against Dan Burn last time at the City Ground and really didn't give him that many problems. We kept like booming it up to Chris Wood, and we all know he's not really like that kind of bully striker like a One-Year is. So how we need to exploit flanks, don't we? Especially Kieran Trippier. He can't run anymore, surely.
Yeah, I was just about to say that there's obvious weakness there, isn't there? And I think hopefully if Hudson-Odoi's fit, then we know where our strengths are as well. But yeah, to be honest, I'd be very surprised if Livramento don't come back in. I don't know if he's injured, not entirely sure.
He came on at the weekend.
Yeah, so if he's fit, I think he'll come in because he's so quick. I'll be very, very surprised if Livramento don't come in. But yeah, they're like we said earlier, they're a good team, very good team. But our backers, especially down that right side, I think that's there for the taking. Hall's a good player. He's a good young English left back. Hopefully, I wanted to see him get called up really for England. But his strengths are on the ball. They're not necessarily off it. He's not known for his pace. And obviously, we've seen what Alanga's done to Dan Burn in the past and Wood's done to Dan Burn. So I think our right side with hopefully Aina and Alanga will hopefully cause them some problems.
But like we've said before, our midfield is massive here because we know Bruno likes to kick people. Tonali probably likes to kick people, being Italian, I guess. And Joe Willock can just run. So I think that is there's important battles everywhere on the pitch, but I think it's like a cliche, innit? Win the midfield battle, win the game, hopefully. But I just think that's such a important thing for Nuno to get right. I mean, we've had a go. I'm going to bring your team up and I'll read it out for the audio listeners as well. So you've gone 4-2-3-1 back to what we know best, with the usual back five of Matt Sells, Ola Aina, Milinkovic, Murillo and Nico Williams. You've partnered Elliot Anderson with Nico Dominguez, and then the front four, which has been fantastic, in Alanga, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi and Chris Wood. What's your thinking with going back to this formation? Is that purely because that's our best formation?
Yeah, I think that it suits us down to the ground to play this. Obviously, with Hudson-Odoi and Alanga, it's the ideal way to play counter-attacking football, and obviously Gibbs White linking all that together. But with regards to the midfield, I just opted for Dominguez because I think Danilo. I love Danilo, don't get me wrong. He's one of my favourite Forest players, but it's not a game where we can afford to be drip feeding people back in. And that's why I've left Sangare out as well. Like, it's a completely different playing at one St. James's Park and then going to this one. It's completely different. And yeah, I think we need, not proven's the wrong word, but fitness levels, legs in there. And obviously with them three, you've got that in abundance. I think that, like you said earlier, it's so cliche, but that's where you win and lose this. They play a flat three. So ideally, obviously we like to sit quite deep, don't we? But if Hudson-Odoi and Alanga tuck in and help Dominguez and Anderson with their three, it leaves Gibbs White free to roam. And I think that's where we can hurt them on the turnover. I think we did that when we played there last time. It was 3 of our goals were counter-attacking goals, weren't they? So obviously one was a bit of a Murillo wonder ball, wasn't it? But I think that's where we can win this 100%, and that's why I opted for Dominguez over the other two. Nothing to do with how much I love them, but just Dominguez, I think's got them legs, hasn't he, at the minute, and them two aren't match fit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think last season we exploited them so much as well because we were more incisive through the middle of the park as well when we got the opportunity. I know Sangare and Danilo played together, but it would literally be like first ball they saw was the out ball to whoever, and it worked to a T. And I'm in agreement with you. And because like Tonali, Willock and Bruno all kind of like to get forward and they all rotate in a sense, maybe that we can use that to our advantage and maybe like hopefully cause some sort of confusion or something. I don't exactly know what, because Newcastle works so hard off the ball as well. It's hard to get at them if they're quick, especially when they get, like you said, at the City Ground, they just really bullied us, and it was just a disaster basically. But I've gone for something slightly different just to kind of give a different opinion almost. So I've gone with it's a 4-1-2-3, but it's a 4-3-3 with a holding midfielder essentially. So I'll read it out. So I've gone normal back five: Sells, Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo, Williams. I thought Ibrahim Sangare is a holder with Gibbs, White, and Anderson just in front of him as two box to box players, and then with the front three of Elanga, Wood, and Hudson-Odoi. What's your thoughts on this, Mason? Would you be disappointed to see this, or quite intrigued?
I don't mind it. I'm not going to lie. I think you did this to me last time I came on. You put your team on, and Danny put his team on, and I was just like, yeah, I like that, even though I'd gone with something completely different. But no, I can see the thinking behind it, because they don't necessarily play with a 10, do they? So it could easily see something like this, and I wouldn't be against it. I think it's more a tactical tweak to mine, instead of like a starting in them roles. Obviously, because Anderson can do what he wants, and I think we see it quite often where Anderson, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, and Nico, especially when they're all starting, the overloads we try and create on the left. Like, even I put it in our group chat, obviously, when we were playing Exeter. So it's so funny. I didn't, at this time an hour ago, I didn't think I'd be seeing Williams, Anderson, Gibbs White, and Sosa playing the overload game that we always usually try and play on the left against Exeter. But yeah, 100%, mate. I see what you're doing with it. I don't mind it one bit. If that's what we went with, I wouldn't be annoyed in any way, shape, or form. I see what you're trying to do.
I just think it's it's kind of worrying about the opposition, I guess, in a sense. But I just think if Nuno really fancies Sangare, I just think you've got to play him with two players who will do his running for him, because I think I think everyone in the whole universe that likes football has identified Ibrahim Sangare's weakness, and that is getting across the ground fairly quickly. But I think with Gibbs, White, and Anderson, you allow him to then almost be that sweeper, but he's got a pass in him. So if he's sweeping and can pass it and get it straight out to Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, I think you're kind of onto a winner. I think him playing in a 2, I think it just limits him, unfortunately, in this Premier League. I just think it's too quick for him. I think Reece has really said it loads on the podcast. He's just not athletic enough. He gives away fouls too often, more often than not, which is, I get it because he's a holding midfielder, but he's got to kind of cut that out as well at the same time. He's got to be a bit more acute with it, and he needs to start proving his worth to us, because I think he's on his last kind of straw, almost strike, because I do think if it doesn't work out for the rest of the season for him, I feel like we might part ways with him, unfortunately. I don't know what you think to that.
Yeah, I think it's almost last chance saloon, and it sounds mental to say because he's literally our record signing, but he hasn't hit the heights that we wanted him to. He started off well, and then he's got injured this season. But yeah, I do like him. There's a player in there, you can see it. I know it's only Exeter, it's not much to judge off, but he's shown he's got it on the ball as well. But it's a completely different game playing League One football on that boggy pitch, having time to pick passes, than it is away at St James's Park on a Sunday when it's rocking and they're running at you with legs from every direction. So yeah, I do get it. I do get what you mean, but it's such a hard thing. I don't want to write him off, but at the same time, he hasn't given us anything to latch onto, anything of note anyway, where it's like, yeah, he can bring us this or this. Like, he obviously had that good stat, didn't he? Was it interceptions or tackles won or something at the start of the season? Yeah, and that is what he is meant to do. Like, so you've got to give him his plaudits for that. But like you said, I think for me, it's like in a little box. It's like he plays. If he's got a box around him of about a metre either way, he's perfectly okay, and he's a really good footballer. But anything outside of that, and he struggles massively. He does struggle massively. That with that initial acceleration, I think that's one thing that you do need in the Premier League, especially with all the nippy players. Like, you look at over the last couple of weeks, the Smith Rowes, the Iwobi's, Adama. Obviously, Adama's a freak, but who else? Go back another couple of weeks, even Brighton, they had 5 or 6 attackers on the pitch, and they were all nippy. I think he's a walking yellow card in them situations. The week before, it was Clivert. I think Clivert was one of the sharpest players I've seen play against us for a long, long time, and I think Sangare would have been dizzy after 20 minutes. So yeah, I think that's, I can't even say, can you improve on that? I don't know. Hopefully he does. I'd love him to prove everyone wrong. But yeah, there's something in there to work with, but not enough as it stands. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he couldn't set a marker down between now and the end of the season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him move on, to be honest.
I mean, I think the evolution of football has seems to move on very quickly. You look at Rodri, who can get around the pitch and does it on his own pretty much because he's just a freak kind of special player. But I think even you look at, like you just mentioned about nippy players. I mean, Ryan Christie at Bournemouth is a narc and a rat, but he gets around the pitch and he's technically very good. You know what I mean? I think like that evolution of nasty player is very technical now, very good player, can get across the ground very quick. And it's not all about being big and strong. And I think Sangare's not really had the opportunity to adapt to the Premier League because he's had such a stop-start to his Forest career. But this is also an issue because if you can't keep fit, how can you justify keeping someone like that? It's a very difficult probably conversation to have in the summer. But if he can stay fit for the rest of it and contribute in some capacity, then it only bodes well for us, hopefully. And that's us getting European football next season because that's where we're at. But just before I do predictions, Mason, we've got a horrible run at the moment. We've got obviously Newcastle, Arsenal, City, I think then Villa, Tottenham, I think, and Ipswich in between that or something like that craziness. But how do you see the rest of the season going?
Wow, that's a big question. To be honest, mate, I'm so relaxed about the whole situation. I know that's probably hard to, because obviously you know me, I know that's probably hard to understand, but I am so relaxed. I think we're in a position of luxury. It's one that we never ever thought we'd be in. So for me, I think I've heard Reece say it a few times on the pod. Any form of Europe is absolutely outrageous for where we've been for the past few seasons. Is absolutely outrageous. If someone said to me now, Mason, here's Conference League, I'd literally rip their hand off. So I think in terms of the next few games, I'm not worried. I'm really not. And I think people can say, oh, he's a deluded Forest fan and X, Y, Z, but I'm really not. I think this next game worries me more than the next two. That might sound crazy as well, but I know what Newcastle are capable of at home. And obviously I've seen what they've done to us this season. I think Arsenal, I've watched them against Leicester the other day. Don't scare me at all. They're like a blunt pencil the other day. I know they beat Leicester 2-0 with 2 goals from Marino coming off on the bench. But yeah, they were nothing really. And City have shown, just like every team has really this season, maybe apart from Liverpool, except for obviously our win at Anfield, they've shown weakness. And for me at home, this is ever since we've been in the Premier League, to be honest, I haven't feared anyone. There hasn't been one game at home where I've gone into it thinking we're going to lose today. There hasn't been one. So I don't see why we should worry. I really don't. And if we play like how we have been playing on the whole, I think we'll be more than okay for any form of Europe, which is my aim anyway, in my head.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think these next few weeks will shape it because that battle for, I think, 3 of the Champions League spots up to now is literally a shootout almost. It's like Wild Wild West. You just don't know what's going to happen. And like, I think the next couple of games at home, for me, I'd rather lose to Arsenal but beat City because you keep them at arm's length potentially, or at least you make that gap bigger because the gap to Arsenal now is pretty big. I think like they're 6-7 points ahead of us now, so I think that's kind of a little bit gone unless a miracle happens. Unless we beat them and they lost a few more games, which I'm sure a lot of teams will be doing this season. I think there's a lot of twists and turns to come. I personally think it might go down to the last game of the season for the last 2 Champions League spots, weirdly, which would be insane. but also, at least it's a bit more fun to be a part of that conversation rather than the one near the bottom, which we've been in the last couple.
I was just about to say it's a better conversation to be involved in than the one with Ipswich and Southampton and Leicester.
Yeah, that's it. How do you see? I think it's a bit of a boring question to say this, but like, how do you see the game going on Sunday? Because I say it's boring because we know how both sides are probably going to play, but I think it's so important that we nullify the crowd as early as we possibly can. At least the Geordies won't have had so much time to drink themselves silly on a Sunday, but I don't think that will stop them, to be honest.
No, it won't. I think, to be honest, I think the longer we can keep it level, the better. If we score first as well, because they're it's a horrible comparison, but they are a bit like Everton fans in terms of they will turn on the players rather quickly if it isn't going their way. If we can use that to our advantage and we can do what we've been good at this season on the whole, where we've been quite just horrible to play against, especially away from home, where we've sat in that block and we've counter attacked. If we can do that and we can take our time on throws, take our time on free kicks, set pieces, put the big boys in, do our long throws with Aina and Williams on either side, then yeah, I think we could if we just make it as horrible as possible and manage to get the first goal, I think it's there for the taking. I really do. It reminds me of obviously the game last time against them was completely different, but it reminds me of that in terms of it's just the game will be so similar, but I think we did the nasty stuff really well that day. And obviously we did have Sangare, who was probably a bit more advanced in his fitness, and it was Danilo, wasn't it? Them two played with Gibbs White in front. And I think we were just nasty. And I think if you match Newcastle, and especially away, and that's what Bournemouth did, they outrun them. And I think their fans will turn. I think that's where we can show our worth. And hopefully Hudson-Odoi's fit, and we can counter with pace and with balance as well. I think that's more important, especially what Hudson-Odoi gives us. Our team's so much more balanced with Hudson-Odoi on the left and Elanga on the right. It just suits us so much better as a unit, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because if Elanga is back on that right side, it's another bow to our string with him getting in behind Dan Burn and Lewis Hall,
exactly.
who he should burn for pace 9 times out of 10 personally. Like the only thing that will benefit them is their positioning, if anything, like especially with Dan Burn, how big he is. So, yeah. What's your score prediction for the game?
Oh, it's horrible. I think I've said 2-1 every time I've been on here, so I'm not going to say 2-1. I'm going to go 1-0 Forest.
Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be good to get back on that clean sheet horse, and obviously we've got to congratulate you, Mason, because I think you've not been on since your red hot take come into light of 10 clean sheets for Matt Sells. But did you ever think it would come so early in the season?
No, that's what I mean. I'd have took it after game 36. Never mind game whatever it was. Was it game 22 or 23? The way we got it, yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I'll take that. I want a trophy in the post. Cheers, guys.
I'm not sure if you'll quite get that. Although your brother is second now in the FPL and running. I think he's only 100 points behind the leader. So he's got a chance. Is that because he's copied your team for most of this season?
Yeah, every time he'll message me and say, "Oh, I've put Aina in, for example," and I'll say, "Yeah, I've just put him in." And we keep doing the same thing, but somehow he's 100 points ahead of me.
Well, yeah, it is what it is. But thank you very much for coming on, mate. I've predicted a draw, just to let you know. But we will be previewing this again with a Newcastle fan, so there'll be more insight from John Lane of the True Faith podcast. But until then, we'll see you next time.